Hey everybody, Dr. Nicola Ducharme here at the Naturopathic Mama. How are you? So we're back today for part 2 of our 3-part series where I am talking about just different aspects of Candida overgrowth and different ways we can approach that and how we can help that situation. So just to give you a reminder, we have recently released our course called the Candida Solution. That goes into these topics in much more depth than we're covering here. However, I do definitely want to give you information that you can grab onto and get you really thinking about what's going on for your own journey and your own health. And just as a reminder, if you are curious about the role that Candida is playing for you, we do have a free questionnaire, and we will put the link for that in the comments. And you can take that questionnaire and just kind of get a bit more of a sense of if this is something that could be relevant for you, because Candida overgrowth affects approximately 70% of the American population. And some people know a lot about it, and other people just have no point of reference at all for what it is or what it entails or how it happens. So I think the questionnaire could be a really good starting point. It's absolutely free. And just kind of get you a little bit more tuned in to what kind of role Candida overgrowth might be playing for you. So if you heard my live yesterday, and if you didn't, then I invite you to go watch it in the replay. So we started the conversation there talking about Candida diets. And I was just giving some of my thoughts and my opinions on Candida diets. And just to, give you the spoiler alert, my view is Candida nutritional modifications are important, but they're not enough in and of themselves to treat Candida holistically and comprehensively. And so I definitely work with people on nutritional approaches, and there is definitely lots of nutrition information within the Candida solution, but I don't feel like that's enough. And I see people just drive themselves crazy doing these hugely restrictive diets, and when they may have been able to be more moderate if they were doing some other therapies and other modalities along the way to help the situation along. So my view is Candida diets, yes, but I don't want anyone going, just absolutely neurotic about it. There is so much more we can do to get a handle on Candida overgrowth, not just diet. So to me, diets are good, but it's not the whole picture. So today I am going to touch on other things that we want to be conscious of in digestive health that can relate to Candida. So I'm a firm believer that Candida just doesn't overgrow all by itself. Something happens, something triggers that, something promotes that. Now, in some cases, that thing is easy to track. It could be multiple antibiotics, for example. Antibiotics kill off some of the good bacteria in the gut as well as killing off bad bacteria. And so that can allow Candida to overgrow. It could be that somebody's been eating a highly processed diet with lots of sugars, and sugar just feeds yeast. So that could be part of it too. But what I have found is that typically when one has a Candida overgrowth, there is something else going on in their digestive system that predisposes to it. Candida overgrows when the environment changes. It's about lack of balance. Okay, so it either is a shift in the microbiome, or all the bacteria and yeasts and all the little bugs that we have in our guts to keep us healthy. So the balance gets tipped there somehow, and or there's a lot of inflammation in the gut, and that can cause problems too. So I'm just going to highlight today 3 or 4 of the things that I see commonly. And again, within the Candida solution, I talk about how to assess them, what tests to do. I can't get into too much detail about that today, but I'll definitely kind of let you know the big things that I think are important for just evaluating what else is going on in the digestive system. So the first one is looking at specific foods and how specific foods are working in the digestive tract. We all have our individual food sensitivities, and there are some that come up more commonly, like dairy is a big one, eggs is a big one. corn, soy. There's a few that are just kind of more common than others. But a lot of people have food sensitivities that they don't know about that can be causing immune reactions in the gut and in the bloodstream, and also affecting the actual immune system that we have within our digestive system, and also predisposing to leaky gut, which is one of the other things I'm going to talk about in a minute. So what's interesting here, we're not talking about food allergies. We're not talking about, I eat peanuts and break out in hives, or I eat mangoes and I can't breathe. That's an allergy mediated by an IgE cell. That's a different thing to what we're talking about. Most people know what their allergens are because it's an immediate reaction. You eat A, B happens. And traditional allergists will test for that through blood testing or skin scratch testing, skin prick testing. What I'm talking about is the delayed hidden food sensitivities. And that's mediated by a different kind of cell. It's mediated by an IgG cell. And they're delayed. They can take up to 72 hours to occur or to manifest. They don't always manifest as digestive symptoms. It could be fatigue, it could be depression, it could be skin rashes or itching. It could be aches and pains. There are many different ways that those reactions can manifest. The IgG food sensitivities, if you ask a traditional allergist, an allopathic Western med allergist, they'll probably tell you that this is all hooey, just so you know. But we are confident in our world of naturopathic and integrative medicine that these sensitivities make a huge impact on somebody's health. And so you can do blood testing for IgG food sensitivities. There are some labs that do a finger stick. So sometimes for kiddos, it's easier to not do the blood draw. But, again, that's an individual thing. The quality of the testing is equivalent, whether it's finger stick or blood test. So looking at the IgG foods is really key, because if you're eating a food that's triggering an immune reaction, and that's going to be triggering inflammation. And anything that creates inflammation in the gut can predispose to Candida. Okay, so it's just a simple finger stick. It measures about 96 different foods. And what's interesting about this is it will show what's relevant for you, and it can take you by surprise, because you could be eating the healthiest diet you know how to eat and still get tripped up. So a lot of people now are having almond milk, for example, because everyone says soy is bad and dairy's bad, and so almond milk's really popular, but you may have a sensitivity to almond and not know it. Some people I've seen have sensitivities to garlic, and they could cook with garlic every night at home. Pineapple, banana, any number of things. But if you have a sensitivity to pineapple, you need to watch what enzymes you're taking, because some of them are sourced from pineapple. So it really allows the whole treatment approach to be individually tailored to you. But the bottom line is, if you're eating a food that causes a sensitivity, then you are predisposing to inflammation in the gut, which gives a sort of happy environment for Candida to play up and overgrow also. The second one is talking about gluten intolerance. And gluten intolerance and leaky gut, which is going to be number 3, they have a lot to do with one another, so there's going to be a little overlap here, so just bear with me. But gluten is one of the most inflammatory foods there is. And I don't know for sure if we're really and truly all becoming more gluten intolerant, or if we're just more aware of gluten intolerance and more people are being checked for it. But I do know that as time goes on, as our wheat and our grains get more and more genetically modified, as there's more and more glyphosate and other chemicals used in the production, I feel like that also contributes to people manifesting with a gluten intolerance, right? So maybe some of us are truly gluten intolerant and the rest of us are glyphosate intolerant, because the chemicals and all the genetically modified crops are just, are just causing real issues. Danielle, hi. No, so rice is not a gluten containing grain. So rice should be safe. I mean, there's always risk with grains of cross-contamination, but just at face value, rice should be safe for people who are gluten intolerant, and actually is a good choice. And there's, many different kinds of rice, so you can get some variety between, jasmine rice, like sticky sushi rice, wild rice is great, brown rice. So that is a good choice if you're trying to avoid gluten. So gluten intolerance affects many, many people, and some people it's subclinical. Some people don't even show up high on a lab test. But where gluten could be an IgE allergy, like the full-blown food allergies that I talked about, or it could be an IgG sensitivity in that second category that I talked about, gluten is unique in that it also can create an autoimmune reaction. Okay, so it's really one of the main foods that creates an autoimmune reaction in the body. And the really severe manifestation of that is celiac disease. And in celiac, the little legs in the small intestine that help to absorb our nutrients get eroded. And so malabsorption ensues after that. Not everybody is as severe as someone who has full-blown celiac. I knew somebody once that, if he got close to a breadcrumb, somebody could be eating toast across the room, and if he got whiff of it, he'd be vomiting for 3 hours. I mean, there's some very serious cases of that. For a lot of other people, it's really just more of a, for some people, it's more of a preference. They just know intellectually that gluten is not a very healthy thing to put in your body. But I mean, that's my case, for example. I'm gluten-free, I'm gluten intolerant. I did the autoimmune testing years ago. It was really high. And so I stopped eating gluten. That was probably, 15 years ago. Now, occasionally, especially if I'm in Europe and sometimes when I'm home in Australia, I will cheat. And I won't get deathly ill from it. I won't, if I just do it once, I won't even feel any different. But I just know that gluten could trigger my immune system to start attacking my own tissues. That's what autoimmune means. So with gluten intolerance, we see a lot of inflammation in the gut. And remember what I said earlier, anything that causes inflammation in the gut can predispose to Candida because it just gets everything off balance. And our digestive systems are all about balance. So number one is it's just plain old inflammatory. Number two is it can trigger autoimmunity. And there's also a link between autoimmune gluten intolerance and thyroid issues. And we're seeing more and more thyroid issues coming out right now. Like it just seems to be an epidemic, especially with Hashimoto's, which guess what, is autoimmune. So the first thing we do with thyroid issues is take people off gluten, especially if there are those antibodies showing autoimmunity. Gluten also triggers the production of a substance called Zoneylin, and Zoneylin contributes to leaky gut. Okay, now I've already said I'm going to talk about leaky gut in just a second here, but Zoneylin is a really important molecule to know about because not only does it predispose to leaky gut, but it can have the same impact on the blood-brain barrier and create almost like a leaky brain, we could call it. Funny term because it makes it sound like your brain's going to fall out of your head. But that's kind of the mechanism. So gluten leads to more zonulin production. Zonulin leads to leaky gut and potentially leaky brain, or kind of just a lack of cohesiveness of the blood-brain barrier. And so that's when we start getting more toxins into the brain, we start getting more pathogens that can cross, and we start getting more cognitive issues, behavioral, like mood-related issues, psychiatric symptoms, like a whole host of different things can happen. Right? So gluten is just another thing that can tip the balance and predispose to Candida overgrowth. So the last one I want to talk about then is leaky gut. And I know leaky gut is kind of a term that's been more and more popularized over the last few years, second only to SIBO, I want to say. But what leaky gut is talking about is in the intestinal wall, our cells sit, with these junctions between them, right? They sit with fairly tight junctions. I always think of it like bricks on a wall. So you've got the brick and then you've just got a little space that has that stuff in it. I don't know, I'm not very practical to know what that stuff is, like the concrete stuff. And then you have another brick. Now, picture those bricks sitting there, but without the filler, without the sort of adhesive sticking them together. Just picture the bricks on a wall. If you have a brick sitting about 1 centimeter away from another brick, and you have a little mouse that scurries into the garden up to the wall, that mouse isn't going to get through, right, to be able to go to the other side of the garden and cause problems. But if that brick was moved and that junction opened up, and now it was, say, 10 centimeters wide, then that little rodent would be able to scurry through that gap and go into the other side of the garden and start eating up all the plants and the vegetables. okay? It's a simple analogy, but that's how it is with our intestines. The cells are designed to have small spaces in between. And the reason is that is allowing for the passage of our food once it's broken down all the way by our stomach acid and by our enzymes in our digestive system. It's broken down into individual things. It's either an amino acid. If it started out as a protein, it's broken all the way down to a single amino acid. If it started out as a fat or, like a lipid, it's broken down into individual lipid molecules. If it started out as a carbohydrate, it's broken down to individual sugars. So our system is designed for those final products of digestion to be absorbed to the bloodstream and go around the body and be utilized for whatever needs to happen, energy production, making muscle, tissue renewal, whatever the case may be. That's the design of nature. And the immune system is all good with that. Yep. Immune system's like, yep, that's what's meant to happen. We'll just ignore those little things because we know they're meant to be there. They're part of us. They're going to go and build other good things. So what happens in leaky gut when those junctions open up is the larger food molecules can pass through. Okay. And the larger food molecules are not fully broken down yet. They're still partially undigested. And those larger molecules then can get into the bloodstream. And at that point, the immune system's like, whoa, hold on. No. You are not meant to be here. And it goes on alert. And the immune system will form complexes, antigen-antibody complexes. It's basically like we're having an immune reaction to the food we're eating. And anytime you have those antigen-antibody complexes, you have more inflammation. It's just putting more stress on the body. And when those cell junctions open up, again, it's the environment it's not meant to be like that. It's not in balance. And that can predispose to Candida getting out of whack as well. So when we look at somebody's digestive function as a part of their whole body, their whole system, and we're looking holistically at the person, you're starting to see where I'm coming from now, right? It's not just about Candida. Candida just doesn't overgrow all on its own. Something triggers it. So as I mentioned earlier, if that something was really clear, multiple antibiotics or something straightforward, or the really, really horrible diet, something that's going to be changed in the future, then yeah, maybe it's simple as that. Treat the Candida, get that pathogen load down, make sure there's good probiotics and things to recolonize, get that balance back, and then live happily ever after. I mean, that's the simple way. And for some people, it may be that straightforward, and that's great. So long as they don't go back to those old habits of having too much sugar or needing multiple antibiotics, etc., etc. For most people, Candida exists within a bigger kind of context. And so the things that I've talked about today are just the context of what's going on in the gut, in the digestive system. That doesn't even begin to talk about, heavy metal toxins or chronic infections, chronic viruses, mold toxins in the body. Mold toxins certainly predispose to Candida, and I would not hesitate to say that you can't clear Candida while you're living in a moldy environment. That's a different whole rabbit hole. But you can see that even within the digestive system context, there's a number of things to look for and evaluate and work on. And so within the Candida solution, I talk about the different lab tests that can help kind of hone in on that information. And the protocols that I've put together there do address multiple things such as that. And that's my philosophy of how we go about it. We have to work on healing the gut and removing what caused the problem in the first place. The final one, just to touch on quickly before I go, is intestinal parasites. A lot of people have these gut bugs that they picked up, whether they were traveling to a country that didn't have as good hygiene or sanitation as we have, but even you can get those parasites anywhere, just, at a restaurant, or sometimes they're fairly easy to pass from person to person. And intestinal parasites will for sure cause, the imbalance in the gut that predisposes to, the bacteria and the yeast getting out of balance. And they're relatively easy to test for. There's different treatment options, some natural, some in the prescription realm. But clearing parasites is an important part as well, to remove the underlying stressors that can give rise to Candida overgrowth. So there's some food for thought for you. So yeah, I mean, it's basically like our bodies are complex systems, and rarely do things happen in isolation. You know, Candida overgrowth may be a sign of something else going on in the body. Maybe, like I said, as simple as being a reaction to a lifestyle choice or medications that can be corrected, and then, you know, that's fairly straightforward. It may be as part of something going on in the bigger picture of gut issues. And it may be something going on as a reflection of more systemic health issues. But that gives you a few ideas of just how to think about it. When you think about your digestive health, think about the things to evaluate. I think evaluating all those factors and then being able to prioritize and know where you need to put your attention is really the way to go to get lasting healing. So that's it from me today. Again, just as a reminder, I invite you to check out the questionnaire. We will put the link to the questionnaire and the link to the course itself in the comments, so you can check those out. And I will be back at the same time tomorrow, noon Pacific Standard Time. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about Candida in children, and going back to, you know, birth and infancy as well, and then how I see that manifest and the different treatment options for kids. So thank you for joining me today, and I will see you back on here again tomorrow.